Well, thanks again for tuning in. Welcome back. We're News Sausage, the program that takes the news of the week and grinds it up into this tasty sausage kind of thing that is either easy to digest or not, depending on the week. Lately, it's been very hard to digest, but today I am joined once again with our co-host, Sunny Riverside. Say hello, Sunny.
Hey there, Dan. Pretty excited about this week. We've got all kinds of stuff going on. We've got local stuff. We've got national stuff. We've got international stuff. We've got stuff. Excited to talk about it.
Excellent. Yeah, we've got a great interview coming up with Zach Wahls, and we're going to be talking about Donald Trump kind of falling apart. I have to say sorry for my prediction a few weeks ago where I predicted that Donald Trump could be resigning within 3 weeks, and that hasn't come to fruition yet. But his interview with Mueller has been delayed, so that's kind of the reason for that. And I did kind of say by the end of March. So we still have some time here yet. There's still some hope, of course, and there's no money on this, but of course there's a lot riding on it nonetheless.
I had disagreed with you that the resignation would come. Well, I believe the prediction was that impeachment would come within the month of March, and I still do not believe that the impeachment will come this month. But it is only the 4th of March today, so there are 27 days left, and the way this ball is unraveling, it really reminds me of the first time when I was a kid. I found a golf ball that had a split in it, and I cut the hard plastic liner off of the golf ball, and I found this tight-packed sphere of a single rubber band, and I cut it to see what would happen, and it made this whizzing sound as all the rubber band unwound from around the core.
I can't wait to hear the snap.
It's kind of telling to watch even the small rats jumping off of this burning ship.
Well, first, we've got a rising star coming up in Iowa. I want to make sure we thank him for joining our show here. You were fortunate enough to get some time to talk to him, and he's got a lot of promise in his future. Zach Wahls running for Senate. Why don't you tell us a little bit about him real quick?
Yeah, Zach Wahls, an Iowa native. He gained national attention a few years ago, addressing the United States Congress, discussing his upbringing with 2 moms. Finished high school. He is an Eagle Scout. He has now finished college, and he is running, having spent the last few years working for LGBTQ rights, human rights. He has now thrown his hat in the ring as a candidate for state senate in the state of Iowa. There is a primary in June. There are other people competing for this seat. I hope to speak with them in the future, but for today I had opportunity to interview Zach Wahls one-on-one, and it was a good experience. He's a very confident, very bright, very astute young man. Yeah, so the setting of this was a classic Midwestern Iowa political moment. It was a house party where the candidate came to meet and talk to people about his views on topics. There were probably not more than 15 people in attendance at this meeting, and it was very much akin to many Iowa caucus moments where I have sat with presidential candidates, where the candidate has a house party with some chips and dip and a cold beer and talks to people.
So I'm speaking today with Zach Wahls, who is candidate for Iowa State Senate District 37. And we're speaking on a beautiful, warm, sunny spring day. We've been at a house party event where Zach was fielding questions from members of the public, one of which was a discussion of water quality and confined animal feeding operations. Would you care to elaborate your position there and any solutions you have in mind for the problem?
Well, so water quality is obviously a multifaceted issue. I think CAFOs are clearly a part of that. I know that there are several candidates, and I would support this, who are calling for a moratorium until we can figure out what the hell's going on and begin to reverse the water quality situation. I don't have a clear sense of my understanding yet in terms of where the kind of cutoff should be in terms of ending that and getting it moving in the right direction again. I think the other thing that's really important to understand is that the CAFOs are coming from a lot of incentives that are existing in the livestock market, and so this is part of a broader trend, and we have to take a big picture look at it too. We can't fix the problem over the long term if we're not willing to take that big picture perspective. The other piece, of course, is looking at fertilizer and the way that runs off into our streams and then our rivers and concentrates in our lakes. You hear to people. My mom Terry grew up in Northeast Iowa, and so I spent some time up at Backbone State Park. And it's absolutely gorgeous, but you can barely use the water at all because the E. coli and all that are a big problem. So we need to treat this like a really big problem, because it is. The bill that the Republicans passed at the start of the legislative session was, I think, only $280 million, but the experts I'm talking to are saying this is a $4 or $5 billion problem with a B. So we can't have these drop in a bucket solutions. We need a real big picture solution.
As an aside on that, I noticed a lot of the conversation from the attendees at this house party today. A lot of that kind of focused on national issues, although you're running for a state office, and this may be an unfair question, but do you see the national issues as having states' rights solutions?
Well, I think what we saw today, so there were a lot of questions that were about local things. There were, I think, probably 2 or 3 that were about these big picture national things. There was one question specifically about misinformation and interference in our elections. And while it is a national issue, clearly that has people here in Iowa worried. And so part of that, I think, is a reflection of the changes in our media. And we spend a lot of time talking about these big national issues. But also, I'm looking around this room, this is not necessarily a room of Democratic Party activists. There's certainly a few, but these, I think, most of the people who are kind of following things online, they're just starting to get involved. And so my guess is that this is going to be a campaign that's going to bring out a lot of people who aren't necessarily super engaged in local Democratic politics. And I'm really excited about that, because I think if we want to win in 2018 statewide and right here in Johnson County, we're going to have to be involving people who stayed home in 2016 or hadn't been involved yet. And I can't tell you how many people. Yesterday I was actually out in Tipton in Cedar County for the Indivisible meeting. Probably about half that room were not really politically engaged before the 2016 election. And so I'm really excited to see so many people getting involved and coming to a house party like this on a beautiful Sunday afternoon like this. I think that's really exciting to me, no doubt.
As I looked around the room, I noticed it was not a cast of the usual suspects who were in attendance here today. We had addressed, or you had addressed, and as you were speaking to the audience a moment ago, the issue of Medicaid and mental health care in the state of Iowa, and it's presently in a complete disaster status. How does that get resolved?
Well, the Des Moines Register had a poll out just a week or 2 ago that showed 75%, something like that, of Iowans agree that our mental health system is either a big problem or in crisis. And I think when you have that many people all agreeing on something, that should be a big red flag that something really, really bad is happening. I've had a lot of conversations with families and patients who have been in the mental health system, have really struggled. People who have been affected by Medicaid privatization and the switch to the tiered rate structure. Just yesterday, we had a special needs meet and greet, and the conversations, some of the stories that I heard were really, really scary. Out in Cedar County, the Village community provides a day rehabilitation program for people with intellectual disabilities. They had a 53% budget cut with 18 days notice when the switch happened. And so that's something that clearly is just not something that can be allowed to stand. We should certainly be talking about full repeal of the privatization scheme, or at the very least moving significant portions of it back under state control. We were told that privatization would increase efficiency, that it would shorten wait times, and that it would save money. It's done none of those things. And so we need to get back to the way things were before. No one's saying this is going to be easy, but the most important things rarely are.
In the district that you hope to represent, it's both rural and urban simultaneously. Issues will come up about consolidation of county services, court services, all the public services in schools. How do you figure that you can strike a balance between your urban and rural constituents?
Well, I mean, you look at the cuts that have happened to education, there's nobody that bears the brunt of that more than our rural communities, our small towns. And so I think the people here, and we're in Coralville right now, people here in the Iowa City Community School District get really fired up about education issues, but I know it's no different if you're in Stanwood or Clarence or Loudon. So I think that all Iowans, regardless of whether you live in a small town or a big city, we all want good schools. We want health care that we can count on when we need it. We want clean water, clean air. And so I think that a lot of these are mostly questions about how do you get there. And the way that I think you solve that is by, and I know the Democratic Party has some work to do on this, but you got to listen to people, you got to be willing to engage, and you have to understand you might not have all the solutions. And I think that's okay. You know, I'm a young guy. I'm 26 years old, but and I know that I've got a lot to learn, but I'm always willing to listen, willing to think about things in a different way. And one of the advantages of being young is that I've got a new perspective on things, and I think that the Democratic Party needs that. You know, we, for a long time, unfortunately, have not been as good as our Republican counterparts in fostering that next generation of leadership. And so that's something that, and this isn't specifically to only my race, I think this is happening all over Iowa, we do need to be a little more conscientious of. So I'd say my three top issues that I'm focused on, when we've talked about some of these already: healthcare, education, workers' rights. The other two issues that I'm hearing a lot about when I'm out speaking at house parties like this are natural resources, water quality in particular, and also increasingly gun safety reform over the last now 3 weeks almost since the shooting in Florida. On the healthcare piece, we talked about Medicaid privatization, mental health. We have to reform those. On education, I grew up here in public schools in Iowa City, Coralville, and the University of Iowa, so I think that you have to be able to properly fund those. The statistic that I always share that blows people's minds is for the boomer generation, the number of minimum wage hours you had to work to pay for a 4-year public school degree, about 300 minimum wage hours. That same degree for my generation is 4,500 minimum wage hours of work. And when you look at the fact that over the last decade, the percentage of college students who are working minimum wage jobs has grown by 70% over the last decade, it just makes college much more unaffordable, and it means that it's harder for us to buy homes or start families, and so that's happening later and later. And then the final piece is workers' rights. You know, the changes that Republicans made to collective bargaining rights, to the ability of cities and counties to raise the minimum wage, and the kneecapping of workers' compensation. And now they're taking that a step further, proposing this fraud prosecutorial division to investigate workmen's comp. So not only are you worried about the insurance company, now you're also worried about the government. It's an attack on workers, and it can't stand.
Agreed. I have not much to add to your stance on organized labor. It's very important to the United States, and it's been diminishing for the better part of the last century.
And the thing I'll say on that is the Democratic Party since the New Deal basically has been about two things: civil rights and workers' rights. I spent the last 7 years of my life fighting for civil rights for LGBT folks here in Iowa and then all over the country. And now I'm really excited to get to work on the workers' rights for everybody, because that affects everybody.
Well, Zach, thank you very much for your time, and good luck to you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Doc.
So you can see how this young man has a great potential in the future, and he's representative of that next wave of political activism that we've been needing for some time.
Absolutely. Nicely done. He is young, but what we've really been missing, I think, is that representation. We need somebody that can hear our voices rather than the lobbyists, and just have some good common sense. And he seems to have that in spades. So really excited to hear what he had to say there. So thanks for doing that. Great job. Now, even though Trump has not resigned yet, there sure seems to be some telltale behavior.
I love that you include the word "yet," even though the president has not resigned yet. Please continue, Dan. Please continue.
Well, I sure think that it's inevitable, and the way he's behaving, it sure seems that he thinks it could be inevitable too. And it harkens back to the time when Nixon was so isolated that he began talking to the portraits in the White House. And at this point, he has lost everybody that he knows that he came in there with, and he's even starting to push out his own daughter and son because of the controversies that they're both involved in. And I mean, how much more isolated can you get? It's got to be getting to him. And just this week, just get your reaction here, Sonny, with some of these things. I know you've seen some of this stuff, but holy cow. We kind of start out the week here with, recently with Hope Hicks resigning. Well, maybe she was pushed out. It's kind of hard to tell, but it sounds like she got yelled at for telling everybody that she told some white lies for the president. And
yes. She didn't tell everybody. She just told Robert Mueller.
Yeah, that's kind of a thing. So she decided to seek more attractive opportunities than working as communications director for the president. Different perspective of all this. You know, other aides have noted that he seems like things are changing. You know, Kushner lost his security clearance this week, which, you know, they bashed Hillary Clinton for having a server that was unprotected, and Trump was told that Kushner could be a security threat. And I got to say, there's a big difference between leaving the door open and welcoming the fox into the henhouse. So he's got some answering to do there.
And it really strikes me as pretty close to horrifying that Kushner has not been eligible for this security clearance and has been operating with a temporary top security clearance for more than 1 year before it was finally yanked. And that is troublesome to me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, another thing that was very troublesome, to say the least, you know, when you're the president of the United States, you have the secretary, and for some weird reason, Trump had a disagreement with Jeff Sessions, and instead of saying, hey, secretary, I'm not sure who his secretary is now, could you maybe call Jeff Sessions so I could have a word with him? He decides to go on Twitter and say, quote, why isn't AG Jeff Sessions asking Inspector General to investigate potentially massive FISA abuse? You big dumbass. I cannot believe you don't do that stuff on Twitter. You pick up the phone.
The dysfunction
What's wrong
of
with
that,
this guy?
The dysfunction of that is unprecedented, unparalleled. It is a seventh grader. Why didn't you invite me to your party? Why don't you just come right out and say you like Bobby?
Is he trying to like show off to somebody? Yeah, it is. It's like the bully in the lunchroom.
Yeah,
like,
and if he's trying to show off to somebody, who is that somebody?
Aides, like I said, have said that he's starting to become unglued, and starting this trade war. They said that was one of those moments where he was really in a mood, and they could tell that this was a spur of the moment decision. This really hadn't gone through the process of the State Department, Treasury, yada, yada, yada. There's no process in this. He just decided to start a trade war. In fact, in People magazine, they noted that one-time pal Donnie Deutsch warned that Trump is cornered and will destroy the world to save his hide, and that this trade war was actually just a shiny new thing to turn attention away from his troubles. So we're just a casualty in his personal drama here.
And my understanding is that these tariffs on steel and aluminum are primarily going to impact Canada and our trade relations with Canada. And Canada is our largest trading partner.
And they are ready to retaliate, too. They want this stopped. They're hoping he reconsiders still, but, he believes in this stuff, too. I don't think he's going to back down.
No. Gosh, I have a new image now in my mind as you present that as an isolation, resultant of an isolation situation. Is he holding a volleyball saying, well, Wilson, What do you think? I think we should just initiate a trade war. Let's put huge tariffs on things that we need for our economy.
Well, I think there's some truth to that, but his Wilson is Fox and Friends in the morning, and Sean Hannity, and bloody face on the volleyball right now for him. Talking about some other creepy things, I really cannot believe that the media hasn't covered this much, but it's been a big week, I got to admit. Well, this has been an extra special creepy period in the Trump dynasty. But after the listening sessions and the concerned posturing of Donald Trump, he goes to the CPAC meeting in front of his own homies and delivers a speech that I've heard him say a lot of things that I disagree with, but there have been few things that quite give me the chills the way this speech did and the way he delivered it. And I actually got the audio from ABC News from the CPAC meeting. I just want to play it for you here real quick.
This is called the snake, and think of it in terms of immigration. And you may love it or you may say, isn't that terrible, okay? And if you say, isn't that terrible, who cares? Because the way they treat me, that's peanuts compared to the way they treat me, okay? Immigration. On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-hearted, frozen snake. His pretty colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Poor thing, she cried. I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you. Take me in, O tender woman, take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. She wrapped him up all cozy in a comforter of silk and laid him by her fireside with some honey and some milk. She hurried home from work that night, and soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken in had been revived. Take me in, O tender woman, take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. She clutched him to her bosom. You're so beautiful, she cried. But if I hadn't brought you in by now, surely you would have died. She stroked his pretty skin again and kissed and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. I saved you, cried the woman, and you've bitten me, heavens why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die. Oh, shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in. And that's what we're doing with our country, folks. We're letting people in, and it's going to be a lot of trouble. It's only getting worse.
Wow. That was creepy.
Yeah, I when I listen to this with other people, you can't help but do these sideward glances at each other. And, I mean, really, what's going on there? What's making these wheels turn like this? This is really it's nothing new. It's just we haven't seen it like this before. This is textbook fascist Nazi speech making 101. And
wow, it really is. Absolutely, Dan. That is fascism in a nutshell. Single out that, as we've discussed in prior podcasts, single out that faceless, anonymous, amorphous other that is the cause of all your problems. That's exactly what they did in Italy. That's exactly what they did in Germany. That is really troublesome.
Right. Well, and definitely the stock market doesn't think it's funny with this trade war. It crashed this week too. So, you know,
for Pete's sake,
it's really not going well for him. And he's actually, you know, he listens to these people. He's telling Rob Portman in the gun meeting that you're afraid of the NRA. He wants to just take guns without due process, and the Republicans are just shocked, and he's crossed that line in the sand. Really, I think even with them, and the walls are closing in on this guy, and they're not putting up with this. He doesn't care what other people think anymore. He's a man with nothing left to lose, and we're all exposed. So hopefully we will get this over with soon. Oh man, I just can't wait for Mueller to pull the trigger and just slap the cuffs on him and lead him out in front of the cameras.
We need to remove all of those crooked people from office and start anew. It's not enough to remove Trump because he, face it, he's nothing but a figurehead. He never has been. He never was going to be anything but a puppet. So removing him isn't going to solve the problem. Removing him and Pence isn't going to solve the problem. There must be a complete cleaning of the slate. Yeah, this is Sunny Riverside, and I'm saying goodbye. And remember, democracy works when you participate. There are primaries coming. There are caucuses coming. There is an election in 2018. Get yourself educated. Know your candidates. Reach out to your friends. Talk to people. Learn things. And make an educated vote.